Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird, back with another rapid fire review, and here we're going to be talking about the surprise release, the Cloverfield Paradox. Now I say this was a surprise release because in case you live under a rock and you did not know, they did a trailer for this movie during the Super Bowl, and Netflix basically said, here's a trailer, by the way, this movie's going to be available as soon as the game is over. So it was actually a very brilliant marketing strategy because if you've been following the show for a while, you know that Fuego and I have actually been covering in the news the fact that God Particle has been in production for such a long time at this point, and it's gone through, release changes, name changes. There's been talk of other Cloverfield movies, and were they going to be the same ones as this or not? There just has been a lot of information floating out in the ether over the past year about this movie, and it's really interesting that it got released in this manner. Now, what Fuego and I did know was that God Particle, aka the Cloverfield Paradox, was originally another movie that was acquired and then smashed into the Cloverfield universe. So I think that unfortunately in this one, the same thing happened to 10 Cloverfield Lane though, in fairness. That was a different movie entirely that then got smashed into the Cloverfield universe. However, I feel that was smashed into it much more successfully, even though again that was a very end sort of transition. This one, it feels like if they had to shoot anything in order to make it match the Cloverfield universe, that part is very obvious, and it's I mean outside of the very, very end, because the last, if you really want to see how it ties into the Cloverfield universe, you can just go to the last 6 seconds of the movie, because that's really about it. They try and use some plot devices to explain some of the Cloverfield universe, and I thought that was at least clever, but I thought that it didn't quite pass for me. So overall, the movie, I think, would have benefited from just being its own thing, not in the Cloverfield universe, because there's a certain expectation that now comes with the Cloverfield universe that this just did not deliver on. It just didn't deliver on it. So that's why I had a big problem with it. I did not enjoy this film very much at all. I thought a lot of it felt like stuff we'd seen similarly before in space movies, in time jump movies, in dimensional movies, like all kinds of things like that have sort of touched on these things before. So the film is actually about this team of 6 scientists that are aboard this space station out on the in the orbit of the Earth. And apparently what's happened is, in this universe, power has become extraordinarily scarce on Earth. So our scientists built this space station that is an experimental space station that is essentially like a Hadron Collider in space. So if anything bad happens, it happens out there rather than on Earth. But the idea is to fire up this beam that would then be essentially an unlimited energy source for the entire planet. And so when they get up there, one of the scientists is this German scientist that has these theories about quantum theory, quantum entanglement, things like that. And, he posits the idea that, this thing, if it goes wrong, anything can happen. There's a warning even that some people on Earth don't want them to do this because they feel like, it could trigger anything. It could rip open a tear in dimensional space, and anything could happen. Anything could come through. Anything, could happen to our side, whatever. And they're like, but this is our only opportunity. So they fire up the beam, and it indeed overloads, and all of a sudden the Earth disappears. And so the crew doesn't know what's going on. And one of the crew has a husband back on Earth who we keep checking in with. And so we do see a little bit about what's going on back on Earth while we follow the team of 6 in space. But essentially, when they disappear, weird stuff starts to happen. A new crew member has appeared on the ship, for one thing. And then also strange things start to happen. One of the crew members gets his arm like sucked into a wall, and then the arm appears later like completely moving around kind of on its own. So there's a bunch of weird stuff that starts to happen, and you know, it's kind of explained towards the end. It turns out that, you know, one of the consequences that was warned did in fact happen, and so now they have to try and figure out a way to get back where they started from. And so it's essentially they all start to get picked off one at a time, but not by anything in particular. Just random things start to happen that are not essentially creature related like you'd think in the Cloverfield universe, which is why it's like, why did you even bother making this a Cloverfield movie? But I'm not going to go into anything more on the story than that. That's the rough and tumble of it. You just got to follow it and see what happens. But again, if you want to see the exact tie into the Cloverfield universe, you can just watch the last 6 seconds of the movie, which was okay. I was like, okay, there's even some inconsistencies in that 6 seconds, but whatever. Overall, I just was bummed by the story. I didn't think it fit nearly as well in the Cloverfield universe as 10 Cloverfield Lane did. So this just felt like an acquisition that was, you know, fresh coat of paint, an extra 6 seconds at the end, and that was it. And that was just like not enough. That was not enough for me. I know we're going to be getting a 4th Cloverfield. I don't know, you know, the way they're doing these haphazardly like this with the releases. I mean, we didn't know about 10 Cloverfield Lane until a month before its release last time, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 2, something like that. But we found out about it, and then boom, it was going to be released like a month later, something like that. But anyway, yeah, the release schedules are wacky and interesting, but if the movies aren't going to be good, then what's the point? And I loved the first Cloverfield movie. I enjoyed the second Cloverfield movie. I'm not a big bunker movie fan. That's why I only enjoyed it. Loved the last part of it. But this one, I guess I loved the last 6 seconds, but not even really. So, I don't know. The acting was good. Let's talk about the effects. I mean, the acting was serviceable. I'm not going to gloss over that. The acting was okay. Some of the actors were more over the top than others. Again, we've seen all of these tropes. We've even seen all of these tropes in space before. I mean, there's the distrustful sort of biology guy. There's the distrusted German engineer. There's, you know, the girl that is, you know, that is friends with the German engineer. But, you know, there's just all these different things. It feels like we've seen it all before, and it's just not that interesting. Everyone played their parts okay, but I mean, it just they weren't all. None of them were particularly interesting. They weren't. So the effects, though, again, they're in space. I like the set design. I liked the you know, all of that, you know, the props and all that good stuff. They did a good job with that, setting it up like it was a space station. I thought that was done well enough. But the effects of the again, I don't really want to spoil it, but there was just a lot of space effects. A lot of them were cool. There was one really interesting space death, I will say. We hadn't seen that death in space before, so I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, oh, dang, that's pretty hardcore. But anyway, overall, the movie was just a big bum deal, man. I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was just okay, and definitely not worthy of being in the Cloverfield universe. You know, a lot of you guys might be like, worthy of Cloverfield. Yeah, worthy of Cloverfield, because I enjoy those movies. Not this one, though. So I will still watch the 4th one when it comes out, because they're doing something different with every one. So that's at least, you gotta say that about the series. Cloverfield, there's 3 Cloverfield movies, and each one is completely different than the other. So that's good, at least. They're not all as good as the other, you know, but you know, that is what it is. That happens with a lot of sequels. So why don't you guys let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the Cloverfield Paradox. I'm sure there's tons of reviews floating out there right now. Figured I'd throw mine out there. Fuego was going to review it too. I told him not to bother because it's just not worth his time. So like I said, let me know in the comments down below if you're interested or not. But until next time, I've been Cecil Laird, and remember, stay scared.